Zain Retherford, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
No, excited to have you on, man. Love having the Penn State guys on. We had Ed Ruth on recently, and excited to get into your career. Just to start, though, in a day in the life of Zain Retherford, what does that look like? Are you back to training now? And if so, what does your daily routine look like these days?
Yeah, been training consistently. I go in the morning at about 9 o'clock, usually get a workout in and come back home, hang out for a few hours, and then we usually have a second practice in the afternoon. So it's a pretty typical day. I just started school again, so I've been kind of, getting master's classes in and fitting that in between practice. So
I can hear you still. Can you hear me?
Yep, I got you.
Perfect. So what are you going back to school for?
I'm getting my MBA online at Penn State, so get to be able to travel with that online program, which is nice for wrestling. Yep.
So what do you want to do long term? Are you looking to coach long term or run the family business? I mean, what does that look like for you?
Yeah, I'm not sure what I want to do with my MBA, but I just know I've been wanting to go back to school for a little while. I definitely would love to get into college coaching someday. I see the lives that our coaches have here at Penn State, and it's pretty sweet. They get to wrestle for a living. They get to just work out for a living, essentially take care of their health and enjoy what they do. And so that looks like a fun life for sure.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of work, but it would be pretty sweet to travel. Just think of all the summer tournaments those guys get to go to. And obviously you're going to a lot of them as well, competing. And when you look at the coaches you have now, I mean, what a stable of just legit professionals, as good as it gets. When you were a kid, though, who were some of your club coaches who had a big impact on you?
Yeah, I grew up going to Ken Chertow's youth camps, and Ken himself, and then Ian Assel was the guy that I work closely with. He works at NC State right now with the wrestling program there. He made a big impact on me, and so did my high school coach, Russ Hughes. He wrestled at Penn State with his twin brother, John Hughes, and he was a great mentor for me, still is at times. He has great feedback on, if I wrestle in a match now. He's really good with freestyle and stuff like that. So, and obviously my parents, they got me everywhere. They took me, 5 hours to go to Kerry Colat's when he was in Maryland, and he had a club there for a little while, and just pretty much everywhere. So
5 hours, that's how far you guys would go?
Yeah, we were not as fortunate, right now, M2 is a big club in Pennsylvania right here in State College. I think we would have went to that as much as we could have, but yeah, we would travel there to Maryland for partners after school. So we would drive that, or sometimes if we had half days for school and it kind of lined up, we would drive down there for a full camp.
Dang, I just love hearing those Road Warrior stories, but that's pretty extreme because, coming from the Midwest, you think Pennsylvania wrestling's everywhere, but you must have been out in a fairly remote part of the state.
Yeah, fairly remote. And what was kind of unique about Kerry Colat's camp was we would drive the 5 or 6 hours, and there was really good kids there that Kerry would throw out of the club. So if they weren't working hard, he would just say, "You're done, no refund on practice, go home." So I would make sure that I was not one of those kids, because I didn't want to be driving the 5 or 6 hours back home with my dad or my mom. Just I disappointed them because I got kicked out 15 minutes into practice or anything like that. But it was fun.
Colat is, man, what a gem in the wrestling world. To watch some of those instructional videos he has on YouTube, he knows so much technique and breaks it all down. And that was some of the instruction you were getting at a young age.
Yeah, we were very fortunate to be able to do that. So the 5 or 6 hours was definitely worth it. I never got kicked out. So,
I mean, from what I read and hear about you, you grew up on a farm and really worked at a young age, maybe as young as first, second grade, working with your family. And so it was no nonsense kind of raising for you. And like when you were in middle school, sometime your dad sat you down and had a talk with you and basically said, you can do one sport. What do you want to do? And that kind of set you on the path you are now. Like, what do you remember about that conversation?
Yeah, I was playing a few sports growing up, and I remember one of the kids my age was a lot bigger than me. He was one of my good friends, and kind of the deciding factor was Pee Wee football. He broke a quarterback's pelvis, shattered it, and I was just like, my dad said, so we need to sit down and maybe it's not football. You're like 70 pounds right now. This kid's 150, but yeah. So I picked wrestling. I enjoyed that the most. I was not really having a lot of success, maybe a slightly above average success at that point, probably average. I hadn't been at the state tournament yet in Pennsylvania. And so once I started to commit to that, my dad was like, we'll get you anywhere you need to be. There's work on the farm, but if your goal is to get a college scholarship someday out of a sport, we'll get you wherever you need to be. We'll put the work in, and they did. So I kind of respected that as a young kid, and I didn't want to waste my parents' time. I saw how much work needed to be done back here. My dad worked double shifts on the railroad at the time. My mom was working really hard in the fields at the on the farm, picking crops and stuff like that. But yeah, I just didn't want to waste their time, and that was kind of the motivating factor. My dad never wrestled, so there was no expectation to like really do well. It was always just, no matter what, win or lose, make sure you're giving your best. When you're at practice, make sure you're not goofing off, because we could be doing other things with our time right now.
And were you doing extra workouts on the side as well?
Yeah, my dad didn't really want me to lift. There's a lot of kids my age lifting, or like cutting weight. So those are two things I didn't do growing up. And so the extra workouts where my dad put in like a dips bar, like a tricep dips bar in the backyard. I'd do that a lot. And in 7th grade, I was kind of getting tired of getting bullied around by stronger opponents. That was kind of, up until that point, that was kind of my MO, was I wasn't necessarily the strongest. So my dad, we created a plan. I built up to it, but I ended up doing 1,000 push-ups 3 days a week. That was kind of my lift. It would take me like an hour and a half. So that was my lifting, and that got me stronger for sure.
And you would do it all at once, or like some in the morning, some at night?
It would be in the evening after school. I would just do sets of 25. And so it really, when you break it up, it's not terrible. Sets of 25, you get different kinds of push-ups. I would do like 10 sets of 25, and you're already at 250. Right. That would take me about maybe 20 minutes. So then I would take a break and do something else, come back, do another 250. And before you know it, you hit an hour and a half in, you're at 1,000. And I think other kids my age were doing, lifting for an hour and a half instead, or some kind of other training. So sounds like a lot, but when you kind of broke it down, it wasn't terrible.
And what about running? Were you big into that, getting the road miles in?
My parents were both state champions in track and field, so they knew how to run. And my dad didn't. They taught me good running form, but it wasn't like wrestling was the goal. I would run to lose weight later on a little bit, just in high school. And my high school coach was pretty big into running, so I would run about, I don't know, 10 miles at a time sometimes. In the preseason,
10 miles. That was like a single workout in high school for you.
Yeah, we had a big hill run. It was called Rainbow Hill, and it was about a 7 or 8 mile loop. So we do that. The whole team would do that, and then sometimes I would on my own just do like a 10-mile run.
I just was dying to know, like, what, outside of the 3 to 5 p.m. high school practice, what was your routine back in the day? Because I've heard you say that you felt like you were doing maybe more extra stuff in high school than you were at Penn State, even like the extra workouts, the extra runs. So how often were you getting that kind of stuff in, like those 10-mile runs in?
Yeah, I think I was getting those maybe once or twice a week. I think the difference from high school to college is, in high school, you're just working hard, or at least I was. I was working hard without really maybe a full purpose. I just know that working hard is going to probably get me to where I want to be. And then once you get to college, it's like everyone's working hard. And
Yeah.
at the senior level, everybody's working hard. So you need to be a little bit more specific with your time. And yeah, that was the difference maker.
But you were just bulldogging it early on, just doing as much as you could. And
Yeah. Yep.
so freshman state champ in high school, super rare in Pennsylvania. Your sophomore year, I had heard you say that you wrestled some kid in the semis who was number 1 in the country, and I could never find it out who it was. Who did you wrestle your sophomore year at the PA state tournament?
It was actually my freshman year
Okay.
of high school, and I wrestled. He was he was older than me. He had won the state tournament the year before, won Fargo the year before. His name was Nick Roberts.
And this is your freshman year when you're still on the come up.
Yes, I remember I weighed about 98 pounds the whole year, wrestling 103. And at the end of the year, you get a couple pounds. So it was 107. And he was weighing a good, I don't know what he was cutting, but he was way bigger than me.
And this was in the semis of the tournament?
Yeah, semifinals. And it was a guy who grew up, we were going to the same club. And I never beat him. No, it wasn't even close. He would, kind of tear me apart. He's bigger, stronger, more experienced. And so that was the first time that I was really able to ever beat him. So
what weight was it, like a barn burner to the end, or how'd it go down?
I was pretty boring, I think, in high school, but the match was, I wouldn't say it was a barn burner, but it was close, and 1-point match. I don't even remember how it went, but I remember how I snuck in a takedown, and that was kind of the deciding factor. I rid him. I think I rode him out and got an escape, and just those simple things that matter. You need to be able to get out.
Yeah.
And those matches, you need to not just hold on, you need to find a takedown at some point. So that was kind of how it went.
I mean, that had to be a match that a lot of people didn't see coming, because were you like on the national radar at that point?
Not really. I did decent I took, I think, 8th place at the Super 32 tournament that year. And so that was pretty much the only thing that might have gotten me recognized. I had 1 loss during the year also, but coming from a small school doesn't really mean too much, just being only having 1 loss at the state tournament. So wouldn't say I was on the national stage or anything yet, but yeah, I think it was a surprise.
That was a big one. And then why did you end up transferring later on in high school?
We were kind of looking to leave. Lion Mountain was the high school I was at. We moved there when I was in kindergarten, so my family wasn't from there or anything. And I was just not happy with the people there. We never really clicked. Tried to include them in a lot of my training and stuff like that, over the years. And just, I don't know, a lot of old tradition ways. They wanted to do it their high school strictly, and not really go to like carry call-outs or, seek outside wisdom. Mm-hmm. Really wasn't my style. There's wisdom everywhere. So and more than that, just the kids at school weren't really positive with me. So I was looking forward to leaving as soon as we could. My dad kind of got stuck with the railroad with his job, not being able to move when we wanted to, maybe in middle school. So it just so happened that I remember one summer I was at a summer camp, and he called me up and he said, "You want to move?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." And there was an opening in Lock Haven, which was decently close to Benton, closer than my previous school slightly. And so we jumped on the opportunity to leave.
And the crazy thing is that they didn't give you the release, so you couldn't wrestle that year, but you kind of made up your own schedule and went on an absolute tear, winning NHSCAs, Fargo, FILA Cadets is what I remember it as. And then you end up at the World Championships. What was that, your first trip overseas?
Yeah, that was my first that whole summer was my first real probably experience with freestyle wrestling. The summer before I did Fargo, but I didn't have much success.
Did you place?
So, yeah, I took 5th in cadets. I wrestled Greco and freestyle, and I only placed in freestyle.
Okay.
Yep.
So dabbling a little bit. The next season you can't wrestle folk style. So did you just start going just as much freestyle as you could throughout the year?
My dad was pretty creative. He figured out ways to, get me to some college practices at times, when where that was legal to be. I remember I went to Virginia Tech one day to wrestle with some of their guys, and we had some at Benton. We had some alumni. That one kid wrestled at Arizona State. He's a 25, 33 pounder, and he had come back and I wrestled with him. So I was getting the feel of some college guys throughout the year a little bit. I couldn't compete, so I had to prioritize training. And I think it was good for me. It kind of allowed me to step back and get better at wrestling, rather than sometimes you're stuck in the competition mindset. You're just thinking about what's the next one? How do I perform at my best? And it's always the goal, but allowed me to step back. I actually played soccer that year. That was the first time since 5th grade that I played a different sport. That kind of allowed me to refocus, recenter, and see that wrestling is just a sport at the end of the day. So that just allowed me to be more creative with my wrestling. And I think that had a big impact on my performance that summer.
Think about not having to do like 50 some crappy dual meet matches a year where you pin the kid anyway. Cause like at that point you're going 50-0, 52-0. You're going a Tuesday night, a Thursday night, a Saturday, and really probably not being pushed at all at that point in your career. And so to have the luxury to take a year off and just train at a high level like that and get some perspective actually sounds kind of nice when you put it that way.
Yeah, it was kind of like a redshirt year, in college. So I enjoyed it.
And what about the trip? Where were the worlds at that year? Azerbaijan?
Yeah, Azerbaijan.
Tell me about that trip, man, because there was some studs there. You had Sadulayev, Rashidov, Agoyev. They were all at that tournament.
Yeah, I don't even remember any of that, but
I was just looking in UWW yesterday. I was like, man, those are some studs there. And
yeah, it was a fun tournament. It was a cool country too to be at. It was my first time out of the country, and so I was just excited to be there. But yeah, it was definitely a wrestling mecca, and it was right on the Caspian Sea there, so I got to see some of that. We stayed at a cool resort. The wrestling itself, I was kind of just shocked with how I think I wrestled a wrestler from Iran first round. I thought was the toughest match I had. The guy I wrestled from Russia in the finals was tough, but I remember it was the periods were different then, so yeah. It was. I remember, I believe I lost the first period against the Iranian first round, and I came to the corner and I was just thinking, I don't know how I'm going to beat this guy because this guy is strong. I wasn't cutting any weight. I wrestled 138. I was weighing 138. So I just remember I was definitely out strength, and I was losing the second period, ended up finding a way to pin him. Actually, it was weird. Last 15 seconds of the second period, I pinned him, and I was kind of excited to get off the mat, but it was cool. So what I remember after that match, I believe that wrestler from Iran took third, and before that, my experiences with Iran were, with America's relationship with them, which is kind of unstable, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of my expectation. And then after I beat the Russian in the finals and won the worlds, I come off the mat, and the coach from Iran came up to me and kissed me on the cheek, and it was like, wow, okay. He says, great wrestler, and that's, I don't know if he knew much English, but I could just tell he was very sincere about it, and there was a respect there. So I thought that was really cool how wrestling that was my first experience to see how wrestling kind of transcended any countries, political stuff.
That's awesome. I mean, I love hearing about, especially the Iranian stories, because everything you hear about Iran is that they just love wrestling so much that the political stuff kind of goes away. And man, your finals match against the Russian, I was watching it, forgot about the best of 3 periods, because I'm like, what? I was kind of trying to figure out what was going on with the score, but first period you lose, second period you get involved in a crazy situation where, to me, it looked like you took him down and then he rolled you through. They end up calling it 3-3, I think. But that one went down to the wire too, going all 3 periods, right?
Yeah. So he won the first period. Second period, I hit a double leg and he rolled me through. So they gave him 3 and then gave me, I think, 2. they were trying to give me nothing. And so we challenged it. I ended up winning the challenge. So I'm still losing with short time left. I remember in the second period. And if I don't score, match is over, he wins. So I remember going all out. I get a takedown. In the process, I feel my head split open. And I just, as I'm like around the corner he's in a quad pod. He still hasn't given up the takedown. I just see blood dripping on his back from me, like pouring on his back. And I'm like, I need to finish this now. So I finish it with buzzer beater of the second period to get the takedown. I get off the mat and they tape me up, send me back out. And I just remember being kind of energized after that period. I could feel that he was getting tired and just kind of found a way to stay in the match third period and find a way to win.
Just grinding it out, man. It was a fun match to watch. So glad we don't use that period system anymore. But it was a little bit of a flashback in time to the old rules. Yeah. And then really you roll through high school the rest of your senior year. Did you always know you were going Penn State, being a PA guy?
No. After Fargo of my junior year, that year I won, Coach Cael had come and Coach Cody had come to the house in Benton, and that was the first time I really met them or had any interest in going to Penn State. I guess I had interest in going, but they didn't really seem to have interest in me. So it's like, well, I'm going elsewhere. And their offer wasn't consistent with other schools at the time. And so I said no. I remember my dad was pretty excited and awestruck, and my mom was actually the one that was like, no, you know what? They're not giving you the offer you want. And so I was
So did you tell him no in that meeting or like later on after the fact?
I told him no in that meeting. I looked at my dad and he was like excited, and I looked at my mom and she's looking at me like, you do what you want. So I said no. The deal, my parents and I made a deal in junior high that if I received a good scholarship to college, that I would get a car. So that was kind of the motivating factor for a middle school kid. And so Penn State wasn't meeting that expectation that I had, and other schools were. So I said no. And after the Cadet Worlds, Coach Cael came back to the house and gave me the offer that I was looking for. And I still at the time had planned for other visits at, other schools. And I said I wanted to go and explore those options even still. And he said, if you go there to other schools and you come back to me and you say, I want to go to Penn State, why would I have to give you what you want? And I said, you make a good point. And I shook his hand right there. So it's kind of how that went.
Dang. I can't believe it. In the first visit to the house, they were expecting a yes, no then, or did you just kind of feel like you just want to be upfront with them?
I just wanted to be upfront. If I just want, for one, I wanted to get what I wanted, and they weren't doing it and they weren't budging. So they were, one thing that did attract me to them. The main thing that attracted me to Penn State wasn't even the winning, the success that they've been having. It was Coach Cael was the first person that had asked me what my goals were. I remember at that meeting, he said, what are your goals? And a lot of other schools were kind of trying to sell me on the amenities of each school and what's the alumni, this or that. And he said, what are your goals? And I said that, and he said, well, at Penn State, we can, find a way to help you get there. It's kind of our job. And I like that answer. So, but yeah, after that meeting, I was not going to Penn State unless they budged. I wasn't budging.
Is this after Ashnault committed to Rutgers, or is this kind of going on at the same time?
This was, Ashnault was, so he was also considering Penn State at the same time as me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, and they were transparent about it. And so it was like, you know what? I'm going to say at that meeting, I knew that me saying no could result in them picking Ashnault over me. And I was willing to take that risk because I felt, you know what, it's not the right offer right now.
Right.
And if they are right, they'll meet me where I want to be. So, and they did.
And so when Cael asked you what your goals were those something that you had like clearly to find out, or is it something that you just kind of said 4-time national champ, Olympic champ?
Yeah. So that's kind of what I said. I had really considered growing up. I considered going to Ivy League school, really putting an emphasis on the education and not really emphasizing the goals post college with Olympics and stuff. And when I made that decision that I wanted to pursue Olympics, I needed to go to a school like Penn State. And that was when I kind of told him, and he said, well, we can get you there at Penn State.
Absolutely. And so you head out. I would be remiss if we didn't spend some time talking about this absolutely epic match at Rec Hall. December 15th, your second match at Rec Hall, Logan Stieber across the mat. Dude, this match, the crowd, I'm getting chills talking about it, is so into it. I remember hearing about this match from afar before I even knew who you were, like, when it happened. But I mean, this has got to be one of the most, your fondest memories early on in your career. What do you remember about that one?
Yeah. I remember not knowing if I was starting leading up to that year for sure. Cause I was a true freshman that year. Mm-hmm. And so most of my buddies were redshirting. And so when it was kind of decided that I was going to start, I was excited. And I remember that whole year, my buddies were challenging me, Matt McCutcheon and my roommate at the time, Garrett Hammond. They would challenge me at just daily. So we would be in the dorms and they would say, I bet Stieber isn't taking the elevator. And they would all take the elevator. So I would take the stairs, or just like little things like that. And all the time, I bet Stieber isn't eating a cookie at the dining hall. So I'd not eat a cookie, just stupid stuff. But I was always thinking about it. I was always like, I'm excited for this. I know we're wrestling Ohio State. And I remember at the match, before the match, a lot of Penn State fans were coming up to me, telling me, hey, this is a big duel. No, this is your first big one. Just try not to give up bonus points. He's a tough opponent. But numerous people were telling me not to get pinned. And so I was just like, well, all right. They're like, we need to say bonus points, that kind of talk. So I'm just smiling and like, okay, whatever. And I remember I got taken down right away. He started getting to work on top a little bit, and it was a little scary because he's good there. It's kind of his wheelhouse, but
he had the bars locked up early on. Like you were, dude, what a defensive effort on bottom, because it looked tight. Yeah,
it was tight. I mean, if it was in bounds a little bit more, who knows what could have happened, but I found it out of bounds. I just remember kind of clawing away first period, and then second period, I think he picked bottom. Mm-hmm. And I started getting to work, and I wasn't as good at turning, I guess, at that point in college, but I knew how to ride out a period. And so I threw my legs in and kind of figured out a way to ride them out. And I remember Rec Hall getting really loud. And so I loved that. And before I knew it, it was tie score, third period. He seemed tired. Clock's winding down. I'm like, I'm going to wait. In overtime, I'm going. And that's kind of what happened. I kind of overshot my first shot, got it on his leg. And I felt like he's flexible. He's very flexible.
God, I was going to say, I forgot how good he is at scrambling. He's doing a full splits, head down, pulling the hands up. Yep. It's like, God, the guy's a 4-timer for a reason. You just forget how good he was at scrambling.
Yeah. So we'd worked on finishing. I felt confident. Found a way to get the takedown. Rec Hall freaked out. That was a fun win. But yeah, I just remember the difference of people. Even my high school coach was telling me that not to not give up bonus points, but he was kind of questioning, like, are you sure you're ready? And I'm like, I guess we'll see.
Where were you at internally? Were you feeling like you were on the level, ready to go head to head with them, or were you kind of like looking to find out yourself where you were at?
I felt ready. I mean, my coaches were telling me I was ready. I felt the best that I'd felt, and I knew how good he was, but you always got to believe that you're going to win. I'm not wrestling the name, or anything else. I'm just trying to give my best. And so I felt ready. I just felt excited about it. It was a big match.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like a whiteout maybe, but it just got loud in there. And as the match went on, I got more and more excited. And yeah, it was a fun match.
That was a fun one. It's fun to watch your buddies on the bench going ballistic during the right out in the second period. They're jumping around, and that's when everyone started to get serious about it. And like, especially back then, Ohio State and Penn State kind of remind me of Iowa, Oklahoma State of old. Like those were big time matches, and to have it in December, super early in the year too. So you were literally in your first semester at college.
Yeah. First semester.
Crazy.
Yep.
Yeah. And so end up a fifth that year. Did you know you were going to redshirt all that next summer, or was it a last minute call?
It was last minute. I think I was planning on wrestling that whole year. And then it got to October, and I think Nico wanted to redshirt that year. And that kind of went, once he started thinking that way, I remember Coach Cael pulled me aside and he said that we would like you to redshirt. And actually, like halfway through the season, they were considering maybe not having me redshirt, kind of December. And I was just like, no, I think that I should. I've been putting in some work, and that was kind of how it went.
So and I was looking at the team results that year. So Penn State kind of, bombed it for the next year, punted everyone out for the next year. But besides that, I mean, that's like the only time during your career where Penn State didn't win the team title.
Yeah, it was the only time. I've been on, 3 other teams that won that, the next 3 years.
Pretty crazy. And so once you were on that redshirt year, what were were you focused more so on like a technical gain, or was it just getting big for the next season?
I would say both. That redshirt year was pretty tough, actually. I was kind of wishing I was wrestling at some points, just how hard we were working. The whole class that was redshirting, really. And sometimes those matches, you're like, they give those guys a little bit more recovery than we were getting. So I felt ready to go. I was excited for the next competition, just from I get to relax a little bit once I start competing again.
Well, especially because you had already had a taste of it the previous year. Like you had already been out there,
Yeah. But I got bigger that year, so it was good. Moved up a weight class.
So who was all waiting in the wings that year as you guys were redshirting?
Myself, Nico, Matt McCutcheon, one of my roommates. You think who else? No, Matt was actually wrestling that year. But the whole class below me. So Jason Nolf, Bo Nickel, Anthony Kassar, Shakur Rashid, all those guys were redshirting. So I was kind of felt like I was back in class.
Yeah. And so and during that time, once that class had come in, because your freshman year was a little bit of the end of the first generation of the Ed Ruth, the David Taylors. But then once the new class started coming in, who were some of your daily workout partners?
Yeah, Jason Nolf. Really, we wrestled a lot, and our coaches, we were just one weight class apart, so it was pretty easy to do that. Wrestled with Jimmy Goulbon a lot. Also, he was a weight class below me, and then a bunch of other partners. But those were probably the main two. Garrett Hammond as well. He was my roommate. He transferred to Drexel at some point and finished out his college career there. But had some great partners. I wrestled with Jason a lot, and those were fun practices. Our coaches somehow remember having to pull us away more often than we remember that. But it was fun. We got each other better.
I mean, can you imagine the scraps? And would you guys do a lot of just 20-minute goes on your own, or was it more like 1 minute, whistled type wrestling?
So the thing with that year was we were both redshirting. So there was our coaches didn't really have a limit on practice. So if we wanted to keep wrestling live after practice, often we would. And so they kind of just would observe that. Kind of thing.
Man, it must have been fun. God, just to see some of those. And obviously, two-time Hodge Trophy winner. Only a few guys have ever done that. One of the tournaments that sticks out most for me, though, of all the ones you've ever wrestled in, is the 2016 Olympic trials. That was, first of all, for Frank to come out of there, was he training at Penn State at the time?
Yes. Yep.
And so leading up to it, I'm sure you worked out with him. Were you going with him pretty good, or was it like a situation where he was kind of big brother in you leading up to that tournament?
I remember I was getting closer. He initially did big brother me, but I remember gradually I'd like, okay, I got a takedown this time. Sweet, I can build on that. And then all of a sudden it's maybe a 1-score match or either way, So, and it might have been I think it was that season we actually wrestled in a match preseason. We would do like a preseason, we would do 2-pound descents. So we'd start at like 6-pound allowance, make that weight, and then we'd have kind of like a match or two. And
in front of fans or no fans?
No fans. I think one year we did fans, but so I think the last one when we made scratch, I wrestled Frank and did well. And I think it was that year. Trying to remember. They kind of blur together, but I remember.
Because what year were you as 2016? A junior or a senior?
I was junior. Just turned. No, I was a 2016 sophomore. That was sophomore season. I was still a sophomore.
Sophomore. Good Lord. Okay. So it was pretty far back. So, okay. And so you did those wrestle-offs with Frank, and then going into it though, I mean, I can't remember now, but the number of NCAA champs in that bracket, not even and then you got Pico out there as well. And man, it was just a really loaded weight class. Who was in that one?
Yeah, I guess Frank, Pico, Jimmy Kennedy, myself, Brett Metcalf. There was
J.O. had to be there.
Stieber. Yep, J.O. Jason Ness was in there. He ended up beating Metcalf, I believe. Yeah, there was a lot of guys. A lot of good guys. Yeah, Stieber was in there. I believe Kellen Russell.
Crazy. And then how did you get knocked out of the championship? Because you ended up coming all the way back for third and made the national team.
Yeah, I lost to Stieber actually.
Okay.
And then he lost to, I'm not sure who he lost to. Maybe
I think it was Pico. Maybe Frank.
I know Frank beat Metcalf, I think. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a crazy weight class, and I just remember that was a fun one because you see some younger guys sneak through and really make a name for himself on the senior level, and that was one that jumped out for me. And so kind of outside of the progression of your career, a couple of things you said in past interviews I wanted to ask you about. One of which is after a big tournament, you do kind of a post-tournament inventory. I'm curious, when did you start that, and like what are some of the steps you worked through in case there's any young listeners tuning into this trying to get a better look at how they evaluate performance?
Yeah, I don't know when I started that. I've kind of always took a mental log of it, but maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I started writing things down in the journal a little bit, and that helps a lot. And I don't really depends on the match or the scenario. Sometimes I don't feel like I need to. Sometimes I feel like I really want to get into something, but I'll start with things that I'm doing well, right? So I want to look at things that I did well because usually there's something you can take out of it positive, right? Win or lose. So yeah, I do that. And then I jump into things I'd like to improve upon. And then I start looking into strategy. Where was my head at? What kind of emotions was I feeling before the match? What was I thinking about? What I eat, kind of stuff, little things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of just keep a log of. And then as you get better at it, things stop becoming inconsistent. So things become a little bit more consistent. So you eat pretty much the same. I do anyway. I eat pretty much the same meal that has given me a positive result before. Mm-hmm. Or things I want to avoid going forward. I didn't get good sleep 2 days before, kind of thing, or this or that. I avoid those things, but common sense.
And the part that I thought was interesting is that you try to do an inventory of how you felt mentally going into that too. That's a little less tangible than just watching the film.
Yeah, sometimes sometimes that is a lot of times wrestling's mental. And so, yeah, I try to take an inventory of how I'm feeling, is my mind in line with my body out there? Am I present right now? Yeah, growing up, I caught myself looking at the name a little bit more than, once I got to college, that was gone. So yeah, I think those kind of things are very important. Just making sure that why you're out there and you're excited to be there, you're enjoying it, just being grateful for a chance to be out on the mat.
And if you noticed the mind slipping into any like kind of backpedaling thoughts, self-doubt thoughts, do you have any routines or tactics you use to bring you back to the present?
Yeah. I don't know if things slip into self-doubt. Sometimes that comes up, but just recognizing that that's a thought. So I imagine it's like weeds in a garden, right? I think it's naive to say that people don't have doubt. Some people might have more than others, but when you do, just realizing that you don't have to zoom in on it. I don't have to make it a big thing. I can just say, oh, that's there. That's interesting. And then throw it away, kind of pluck out that weed. And so that's kind of how I think of it when something pops up like that, like for instance, 2016, before the finals, I could not sleep at all that whole night. Could not sleep. I just kept getting butterflies the whole night because I was so excited to be in the NCAA finals and competing. So the next day I was kind of nervous. I'm like, I got like an hour of sleep and I was trying to, and what if that affects my performance? That was kind of the doubt that creeped in then. And so I just kind of plucked it out. I was like, you know what? Doesn't matter. We're here. This is the moment we're in right now. These are the circumstances. They're never ideal. Luckily I was healthy, but it was the sleep that was the little bit of doubt. Just pluck it out and just come back to being grateful to be here.
And is that something that you vocalize with Cael, or Cael will notice that in you, like on the day before, the day of the finals, something like that?
I think I mentioned to him that in that instance that I didn't get much sleep, and he just said, "So what? One night of sleep isn't going to change how you wrestle." And I'm like, "You're right." So, and that's like anything, something small. It's very rare that we're 110% when we compete. We usually have, whether we got poked in the eye or didn't get sleep, or you're a high school kid and your girlfriend broke up with you or something, it's like things are rarely 100%. And so you still need to go out and win, when things aren't 100%. So yeah, just pluck out those weeds, anything that's maybe could hold you back. Don't zoom in on it. I think a lot of people zoom in on it and get worried, and there's no point in that. It's like, this is the hand you're dealt at this period of time. You got to make the most of it.
And you think about a year where that was especially true. I got to think 2019, with all the delays that happened that summer, that was an opportunity that was ripe for, thoughts to fester in there. And when you got the job done in that third wrestle off in PA, I've never seen you react that way after a match. I mean, where does that one rank in terms of all-time emotions throughout that summer making that world team?
Yeah, it was an interesting summer. I had a lot of anger with how the whole situation was handled. I remember, and I was competing with anger in July of that year. I wrestled not my best. And so
where was that at?
That was in Turkey. And I ended up getting injured, actually. Sprained my LCL pretty good. And so took a few weeks to kind of relax and regroup and just think, me competing angry is not my best. Doesn't fix the situation at all. And so I just kind of let go. I let go of the need to control the situation and just focused on enjoying wrestling. And I wanted to win. A lot of things were uncertain. We didn't know when or if there was going to be a wrestle off, but I just realized that was out of my control, and being angry at it wasn't going to change whether it happened or not. And so that was kind of my focus. And when it did happen, it was just the fact that it was in Wilkes-Barre, which is 45 minutes from my hometown. Just good things started to happen like that. Mm-hmm. And that just kind of added to the excitement that I had for it. So I guess my perspective changed from being angry about it to being excited about it. And then I wrestled a lot better. And when I finally won that match, there was emotion of just, I think it was just finally solidifying it. There was no more uncertainty. And that was why I was so excited.
And was that the fourth or fifth match between you and Yianni in like a 6-month period? And they were all absolute burners.
Yeah, that was fifth. Number 5.
Jeez,
Yep.
man. What kind of feel does he bring that you don't see outside of other guys in the U.S.?
Yeah, he's got a lot of good technique and he's flexible. So he's hard to predict, I guess you could say. And when you do get in on his leg, a lot of wrestlers, half the battle is getting to the leg. And once you get to the leg, you just got to explode through him or this or that. But when you get to his leg, that's kind of half the battle. So you need to be able to focus on finishing well and being explosive. And so, yeah, he has a lot of tricks in there with, you got to be able to finish your shot. And also he has offense, he's technically solid. So that's kind of the feel that you get from him that not a lot of wrestlers give you.
Yeah, no, those are fun matches to watch. And, obviously can't wait for the next one, to see you back out there. 2 quick questions that we sourced from the audience and we'll let you go, Zain. Sound good?
Sounds great.
Which match have you watched the most? Either as yours or someone else's, but if you had to look at all the matches you've watched on YouTube, which one have you watched the most?
I would say Coach Cael's gold medal match. Probably watched that one the most. I think it's a pretty cool moment.
Yeah.
And and that kind of inspired me to want to pursue the Olympic level of wrestling. So
it's an epic one. That whole story of Cael, losing at the US Open and then going 3 matches with full heart at the trials. I mean, that's a fun, that alone is just a story. Let alone the 4 undefeated titles.
Right.
And then I always mention this, but I've yet to get a good story on it. But when he bet the team that if they won, he would come back to make the world team is also just one of the most legendary things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Are you there for that?
No, I missed it by at least a year. Yep. But that would be cool.
Favorite book that you've read consistently or given out to people consistently?
Man's Search for Meaning. It's by Viktor Frankl. It's a Holocaust survivor and just talks about the psychology that went into surviving those concentration camps. And it's really interesting. It makes you feel, if you're ever feeling sorry for yourself cutting weight or dealing with anything wrestling related, you just read that book and look at the struggles that they were having and how they mentally figured out a way to survive. And
fantastic book.
Great
so
book.
Good. Yeah,
yep.
Really good. Yeah, I love the thought that the only thing you can control is how you react to external events, and no one can take that away from you.
Yes. Yeah. Your attitude basically is the only thing that can't be taken from you at any point.
Right.
So,
yeah. No, it's awesome. And the last thing is, do you have some camps coming up or any camps you want to promote that I know you're going to be doing here?
Yeah, I'm doing one in Miami with the Miami Wrestling Club, November 13th and 14th. That'll be in Miami, and 2-day camp. It'll be a fun one. So if you guys want to check it out, look up Miami Wrestling Club.
Miami, Florida, right? Or Miami, Ohio?
Miami, Florida.
Miami,
yes.
Florida.
So yeah, if you want to travel to that, Miami will be a warm spot that time of year. So it'll be fun.
Zane's heading to South Beach. Get your tickets, folks.
There we go.
Zain Retherford, thank you so much for coming on, my friend. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Have a great day.
Yep, you too.
That's the end of this episode of Wrestling Changed My Life. Thank you so much for tuning in. To see video clips from this interview, go to Instagram at Wrestling Changed My Life. As always, Wrestling Changed My Life is proudly presented by Spartan Combat. Please go to SpartanCombat.com to support this show.